Boom, boom, bam, bam. We're live, man.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another A Million or the Moon live stream. We have some very special guests with us today. What up, Motley? What up, Jake? How y'all doing?
Good, guys. What's going on?
What's up? What's up?
Well, man, look, man. The title of the video or the live stream today is "The World Is Ending" live stream, and McDonald's employees tell all. We're gonna tell our secrets today. The whole market is
Secret
down.
sauce.
Secret sauces. We're gonna expose everybody. The whole market is down. Inflation, recession is around the corner. The whole crypto market is down. Everything is bleeding. And yeah, man, we're gonna discuss that today. Brendan, what do you wanna start with?
Yeah, well, look, I think I forget who said it, but I think some commentators, some analysts said the other day that the S&P is officially in a bear market. So it's
better late than never.
Like really, you don't say.
So with Bitcoin at 20K down somewhat, like what, 70-ish%, 60-ish%, I want to ask you guys, how are you personally dealing and feeling about this crash? Are you panicking? Are you selling? How do you feel about this crash? Maybe we can start off with Molly and then go to Jake.
Yeah, I think that statement you just made kind of sums it up, right? Like and we were talking about this, like when everyone finally comes out and agrees, like we're in a bear market, and like you see it with the S&P 500, you see it with the crypto influencers. Like there was always like debate before, like, oh, I don't think we're in a bear market yet. I don't think we're quite there yet. And like we talk about, like the Hex founder, Richard Hart's been like, yo, like we topped a long time ago in Bitcoin, long time ago. We fell out of the parabola. We've been in this bear market. But once you get that consensus of everyone agreeing, like, okay, we're here, we're at this bear market, we're at this point. We've been here. We've been in here for a minute now. So now it's just like, when do we recover? And like today, as we speak, when we're doing this stream, we're going to have the Fed meeting, and we're going to have our first big rate hike. We're going anywhere from half a point to maybe a full point today. So like that's going to be really interesting to see, I think, in the next hour or so, and see how the markets start reacting to that. Do we just go into this full-blown death spiral capitulation? Because there's more to come, right? Like we're going to see more of this coming as time goes on. So like we're just getting a taste of the hurt now. It's only going to ramp up and get worse as time goes on. So it's going to be interesting. Buckle up. I mean, a lot of us, if you were smart, you were getting cash on the side, because cash is going to be king when it comes to all this blood on the street. These are the hardest times to buy, but these are also the most optimal times to buy.
100%, man. Well, definitely. I mean, like, thank God, after S&P is down 30%, we're finally up 0.7% today. So that's extremely good news, I guess. But how about you, Jake, man? What do you think? What have you been doing?
So when it comes to the markets, I have a pretty simple view on it. As long as the Fed is doing their thing, the market's going to have a very difficult time. But Motley brought up a very interesting point, and that is when everybody agrees it's a bear market, usually that is close to the bottom of a bear market. Dude, the people who are like, this is still a bull market extended cycle, I think they're like on some drugs. That literally is the only option.
Is anyone still on that talking point?
And it took forever.
I don't think so.
They did it for so long, yeah. And now it's still bear market. As long as the Fed is increasing interest rate, I think it's just going to be a very weak market. And the thing that people have to realize with crypto, it's less than $1 trillion market cap now. This is not a mature market, so the math in the crypto coins will not hold the price up. So not a mature market as long as Fed is still swinging around. And one thing I've kind of also seen is like this general consensus around the bottom of the bear market being September, October, November, which very likely means that will not be the bottom, and it will happen sooner or after that point.
That's I've seen that. I've seen that time frame a lot. So you're right.
Do you guys have opinions on that? Like, how much do you buy that kind of cycle argument? How, like, if we look at how long the bear markets where we truly just go only down have lasted historically, 2018, it was 65 days. During 2013, it was 413 days. So a year, a little bit over a year. Do you guys still buy into that argument? Do you think that roughly 1 year time frame for the truly down bear market makes sense? Or do you think it makes more sense to kind of follow these macro events? This, will quantitative easing kick back up again? When will the rate hikes end? Do you think that's more important to pay attention to, or do you think there's something to that time frame?
I think it always adjusts as we go out through time, right? Because like we have seen, this is probably the most adoption we've seen this cycle yet, and it's still nothing, right? Too. So I'm a little bit torn, because this is some of the most adoption we've seen. world's richest man bought in. You have stuff like Grayscale now. You have these big hedge funds that are ironically enough in huge trouble, like Celsius, Three Arrows Capital, and I'm sure we'll dig into that as the show goes on. So like I'm seeing more and more of it gaining adoption, and yet we've still only scratched the surface. So like these things do change, but how much are they really going to change these cycles that we're seeing? I, for one, don't follow it too much because I'm not the biggest TA guy. I do like to follow the macro events more and what the markets are doing. That's why, like, even with Hex, right? Like it felt like we're pretty close to bottom if we're not at bottom, but I do know what's coming down the pipeline as far as the rest of the markets with these rate hikes, and these markets are really going to start feeling the squeeze. So I'm hesitant to like even predict something like, oh, we're close to a bottom in Hex or we're close to a bottom in crypto, because like this can get a lot worse. And like if we do start seeing these rate hikes go up, the speculative assets that we're in, especially crypto, which is the most volatile, these are the ones that feel that punch first and the hardest. So like Bitcoin could just, I mean, this could just be the tip of the iceberg. Like we could get those 15, 12, 10K Bitcoin price targets that people thought would have been absolutely insane, not only like a month or two ago. So it's going to be interesting to just watch that. I like to look at all sides, but I generally tend to lean more towards what the macro events are playing out as far as my decisions go.
100%, man. I do think it's pretty important to acknowledge that. Yeah, it does adjust. I think there's a dynamic element to it. You know, for 10 years we saw that the cycles are working pretty well on the chart. There's a predictive element to it that it can help us, kind of time things. And but overall, over time now we got massive adoption. These, Bitcoin and all these different cryptos are on these different companies' balance sheets, and they will treat it how they see the crypto the actual market outside. So I do think there's definitely an element to that we got to take into account, especially with something like Grayscale. Now people are buying it through a third party as opposed to through the actual exchange. How's that going to affect everything? Is definitely some way to it. But we got Funding Jim, man. How are you doing,
man? How's it going?
What's up, Gary?
Yeah, make sure that you can hear me. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you.
You're good.
Fine.
Great.
So we just asked Motley and Jake a couple questions here about the cycles and the Bitcoin cycles and how adoption now is affecting everything. But maybe let's just talk about how are you feeling about the market right now? How are you reacting to everything? Are you taking any steps that could be helpful for the listeners?
Are you panicking? Accumulating?
Are you panicking?
Are you talking about me specifically, investment thesis in this market? What do you mean?
Yes.
Well, I've always advocated having multiple sources of income, not being fully reliant on only what's happening in crypto, as far as bull, bear, all that kinds of stuff. Motley's the same way. He's very diversified, I think, across a lot of real estate and things like that. Maybe he's exited out of that to some degree, but he has multiple business interests. And I say that everybody in crypto should think of it in that same way. People, whether it's recession fears, whether it's war fears, whether it's the crypto market because Michael Saylor's going to crash Bitcoin down to $3,000, you should still have revenue that you don't have to sell your assets. Like people sell things that they have to sell, not what they want to sell. So
right.
Like a lot of our content, at least me and Motley specifically, we talk about, other things outside of only crypto as your support system. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I like talking about.
How do you feel about this bear market? Do you buy into kind of that 1 year time frame for the bottom of the bear market, or do you perhaps more follow macro events? Are you waiting for quantitative easing to kick in for perhaps a bottom to kind of appear? Do you buy into maybe waiting for the interest rate hikes to end? How do you think about timing a bottom, or do you even think about that? Is that even something useful?
Well, you got to ask yourself, kind of like a chicken or egg scenario. Why do charts matter? Because everybody's looking at charts. Why do charts move the way that they move? Because people are reacting to charts. They're anticipating what a chart will do, right? So the more people looking at something, you can be contrarian. You can say, everybody seems to be going this direction. I'll go the opposite direction because the value proposition, the risk reward ratio is higher, right? So when everybody is, like I said, news events, YouTube content creation, everything's focusing on one particular thing that's going to happen. Rarely is that what happens.
That's true.
The herd mentality.
But like you just said, is it the 1 year out and then we're going to go out of the, is it all based on the Bitcoin halving event? Is that what triggers, people to feel better sentiment about investing into crypto space? Like what moves the the needle enough to where it's kind of like the avalanche event. You know, what makes it collapse or what makes it accumulate? Like, which one is it? And it is popular narrative. It's people that you identify with, people that watch your content, probably think something similar to you, relate to you, think you're like a family member or a voice in the mystery of why do markets move the way they do. It's the same thing with me, Motley, with anybody in this room. You know, people, you attract the audience that appreciates your content and your perspective. So if you have enough influence, it moves enough people, and if enough people move, then the chart reacts, and then people say, "See, I was right."
Definitely. Well, you know, we appreciate your input. We know you're having a good time outside. Looks like the weather's looking nice. You know,
you're having Switzerland. This is in Basel, Switzerland.
There we go.
Nice. Going on right now.
Oh my goodness,
it's gorgeous.
It's very cloudy and raining where we're at right now, man. So
yeah, but this is like financial markets joining in with the crypto markets. You know, art is one of those things that kind of brings people together. They end up talking, more openly about ideas. And I've already made a lot of really good engagement with curators and museums, and some of it has to bleed over into the NFT space and things like that for crypto. And the reason I'm engaging these people is because PulseChain has this value proposition that I think can outshine Ethereum in its NFT world or in its tangible world as far as direct. And then in the finance world, it's everyone's paying attention to what's happening in Bitcoin and Ethereum and all these other things. These are the same people that are investing. That are at these big events. So I'm trying to encourage people to go out of your living room, out of your basement, engage the world, talk to people, right? Because the more relatable you are, the more that they're likely to hear your message. And I think that the products of Hex, PulseChain, and PulseHex are exceptional in the crypto space.
Definitely. What do you think? What do you think the market is heading to right now in terms of traditional market and crypto? Do you have any kind of intuition to where things are heading? Everyone's talking about recession. Everyone's talking about we're heading a bear market for a while. Could be a couple of years. Could be 5 years. Could be 10 years. No one really knows. But what's
your crystal ball saying?
What are your thoughts on that?
Give me investment advice, sir.
I don't know, man. I think that I've been paying attention to financial markets maybe like 12 years, something like that. Maybe about that long. Before that, I was working and just selling my time in a profession. And then after that, my speculation started with real estate as far as where to put resources of time or money or idea. And after that, it was startup culture, like to support entrepreneurs, 25 to 30-year-olds that want to make an app or want to put a box on someone's countertop that talks to them, all the tech stuff that you have around you now. So I like people to think outside the box. And if you have enough of those, especially in our community of Hex, I think we're unstoppable. But like asset class, when you're talking about, okay, there's this idea that there's no such thing as destruction of wealth. It doesn't actually ever get destroyed. It simply transfers. It transfers to a different asset class, different holder of that wealth, different form, but there's no actual destruction. Like, only war, worldwide war could wipe out like the knowledge base it took to get us here. So I tend to have multiple asset types. Like it was a little insulting on Twitter. I said something like in response to a tweet, and it was something like, what are people doing? And I said something like preparation to buy more Hex for PulseChain, right? And then they were like, well, you already have Hex. How are you going to sell Hex and to get more PulseChain? Well, there's other asset classes. There's other cash flow systems that all of us should be engaging. I don't think anybody should be only living off of only crypto or only crypto content, honestly.
That's blasphemous.
If your speculative money is speculative money and it's in the best performing asset class possible, you're probably going to have the best reward possible for your speculation. But I still don't think of it as bread and butter. Even in this down 90%, down 90% on top of 90% kind of stuff that's happening in crypto, it's still speculation money to me and to Motley and others, I think.
Definitely.
I don't want to speak for Motley, but that's my perspective.
There we go. No, 100%.
Yeah, and look, with these PulseChain delays, I want to ask Stefani, Jim, and then maybe everyone else can comment as well. Do we think that Richard is timing the market? Like, are we going to end up getting the PulseChain launch around 13K Bitcoin?
I don't think, me personally, I don't think we're going to have, until there's bottom signals based on Bitcoin. I think the chart, Richard always wants beautiful charts. Me personally, I think he wants beautiful charts. I think that the timing of things me personally, again, I have no reference point other than gut. And my gut says that PulseChain could have launched not long ago, but there were all kinds of signals that it's time for a bear. He's been talking for over a year about, look at all these topping signals. The richest guy bought, the richest guy sold. Look at these topping signals, $1 million JPEGs. Look at these topping signals. Here's the chart. Like, he's pointed out so many things, and he's gone through these cycles so many things. And I have the belief, whether it's true or not, that he moves the markets if he chooses to. He can move big markets, Ethereum, Bitcoin. He can move those.
I think Richard specifically.
I think Richard can. I think it's possible. He's been in the trade game for a long time. He's a savant when it comes to chart. He's had a lot of real world experience about what works and what doesn't. He tends to replicate things that work. He may popularize an idea, make it more digestible for the audience that's consuming his content, but he observes the market and he plans. He's a game theorist. You know, he's been game theorying for 20 years, or longer, right? So I think he can move the markets, and I don't think it's time to pull out of a bear. We've only had some level of pain for a week, 3 weeks,
Right.
4 weeks, or something like that.
Yeah.
And I think that when Bitcoin hits 13,000, it gets into that window where he can have his ego stroke of, look how right I was, look how long I was right, look at all of this audience that was haters and all the ones that were believers, and who turned out better. Like, I think he wants that narrative. He wants that history.
Right.
And
So
he's definitely
I don't think he'll move it earlier.
right, and he's definitely extremely patient right now. I mean, like, why would you want to launch anything at this state of the market? Looks like there's, some sort of a long way down as well, and some sort of extended time period. Launching I know, like, it's pretty clear, the Hex community in general has just been really excited for this, and we saw a lot of delays happening, but again, me personally, I do not see any reason right now to have some sort of launch in this kind of market state where everyone's selling and there's so much fear in the market. You want all of that to get out of the way before to keep that hype going. Not only just the hype, in terms of price performance as well. So that makes a lot of sense. Molly, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I agree with Gary. I mean, I think it's pretty straightforward, right? I think he probably could have launched PulseChain if he wanted to, pretty close around the mark he was calling for, like mid-May. But it is that scenario where what he's been predicting is finally starting to play out. It just took us a little bit longer than what we were hoping for. Like, it's gonna take a little bit longer for the JPEGs to go to shit. It's gonna take a little while for Bitcoin to. I mean, even today, I still saw people saying, like, this is the time to buy Bitcoin at this like 20 to 22,000 range. And like, you still need those people to feel the pain, right? Like, you still need more pain to come. Like, we've just gotten like a taste of it. And so I think, could he have launched? Yes, probably. But there's a way to not only time the market, but to make PulseChain better as well when you're timing the market. So that's what he's doing, right? Like, his developers is like, hey, we can go change this to Golang. We can increase the throughput. We can increase the speed. And you only launch once, right? So like, why not make it the most optimal launch ever? So you can do both simultaneously. You can optimize what PulseChain is going to do. You can make it the absolute best product it can be, and you can have an amazing launch. And I think that's what he's doing. So it just happens to be able to coincide both. The bottom of the market, making PulseChain the best it's going to be, to have the most optimal launch. You only launch once. It just makes sense for all the above to play a factor. So is it just one thing of him timing the market, PulseChain not being ready? No, it's not going to be as black and white. There's going to be bits of gray in there. And I think he's using both sides. He's using timing the market and making PulseChain the best it can be to have the optimal launch. I think that's what he's moving towards right now. And so honestly, we might not see PulseChain till towards the end of the year, but at the end of the day, no one knows. And like, we definitely don't know. And even Richard is going to be somewhat into the dark based on what his developers are working on, what the timelines are, is there any issues, bugs, and the markets. So we're just going to have to play it by ear as it goes, but no one should have expectations anyways, because as corny as it sounds, we really did sacrifice for freedom of speech, freedom of movement, like no expectations. Like, there's a reason why all those wording, all that diction was chosen, because to get around this securities narrative and everything else like that, like, we really shouldn't have expectations. The moment we click that sacrifice button, we shouldn't expect any of that money to come at any length of time. And just when it does, just be grateful that it does and that it's the best product that it can be at that time. So just patiently wait. Like Gary said, focus on other things, other revenue streams, take advantage of what we have today, which is some of the best prices that we've ever seen in Hex. Like, people complain about coming in late and OGs having all this Hex to dump on us. Like, this is your chance to become OG. You're getting OG prices. I'm getting prices that I didn't have, but like over a year ago now, and I thought we'd never see them again. I have that opportunity to buy back, increase my position that I want to. And so like, this is where you earn your stripes. Talk is cheap. You have the ability to buy Hex at OG prices. Are you going to take advantage of it or not? And like Gary said, come up with those revenue streams, be creative, that you can create dry powder and acquire those assets when the rest of the market is bleeding. This is when people get truly wealthy, is taking advantage of these scenarios, and they don't come often. So take advantage of it.
It's very rare. Like, literally, if you believe in the 4-year cycle, it's literally like once in a 4-year opportunity, and each cycle is going to have diminishing returns, and so it's really a once in a lifetime opportunity. I also want to ask Jake. So Jake, do you buy into the kind of consensus here? Do you think it makes sense do you think, number one, Richard is delaying the launch of PulseChain for around the bottom, and number two, do you think that makes sense?
So I kind of agree with the narrative. So as a ex-software engineer, the way it kind of works is you have a minimum viable product that you want to put into the market, and you want to have a list of optimizations that you'll do in the future for increasing the user experience. So the thing I kind of think happened is, like, I'm not sure who said it, but I think he really wanted to launch it like mid-May. But because of looking at the market and things it looked like freaking doomsday, and doomsday is happening. It's going to happen for a while. And he was just like, okay, so here are like the top optimizations we can be making instead of just sitting around doing nothing or launching PulseChain and then launching them in these market conditions. I think he was just like, let's do the optimizations, let's do it now. It's better for everybody involved. And the kind of the metaphor I like giving people is, everybody knows that cold showers are healthy, right? But when you're in the cold shower, everybody's like, I freaking hate this. But then once you get out of the shower, you're like, okay, that was actually kind of good. And I feel like we're now in the cold shower. You had the PulseChain
That's a
sacrifice
perfect
launch.
analogy, man.
Exactly. Now you have a sacrifice period and then launch. And now we're in the cold shower. It sucks, but we'll come out of this being like, that was actually kind of good. So that's kind of my 2 cents.
Yeah. And you know what? We brought up, during this conversation, a lot of the talk about narratives and the importance of narratives. And like, with a lot of us here being really familiar with kind of the Hex space, I did want to bring up a particular narrative surrounding Hex that I feel very curious as to how you guys feel about it. Maybe we can start off with Funding Jim here. Is, for a long time, Hex had this narrative that we're decorrelated from the rest of the market because our liquidity is mostly in stablecoins and so forth. Does it still make sense to think about Hex being decorrelated from the market, or is that narrative perhaps not as strong as we once thought it would be?
Let me answer really quick. I need to get back to my party. So my friend John Burns is the one that invited me to this. I don't want to be too rude, so I'm going to step out after I answer this.
Absolutely.
People that sell into the market when they have a yield, right? They have a significant yield. They have a narrative inside of Hex. They have, here's ongoing cash flow, maybe quarterly, maybe monthly, maybe annually. People pull capital out, right? They pull cash out. What do you think that they did it with that money? Do you think that they continue speculating in other products that might or might not work as well as Hex did for them? I don't think so. I think that they may have pulled capital out and then they put it to things, hopefully, that has yield, or at least provides, ability to, again, I like the real game, to buy a 4-plex, a 3-plex, a 2-plex, a single family house, set it up for an Airbnb in case recession, in case my wife loses my job or her job or whatever, right? So I think that some of the capital that came out, just personal opinion, at least what I would do myself, is that kind of narrative. I already have cash flow from other businesses. Some of that money, I took a percentage of the margin from rentals and put it into Hex. When there was no fucking chart, when there was no people, when there was nobody, right? Motley did the same thing. Like, he was in the rental business game and things like that. And then he made a calculated decision based on very little information other than, hey, this community, hey, this guy seems like he's a stand-up guy as far as the founder. And then we speculated. We took chance, right? And people that are joining recently, the same sort of thing. Maybe they haven't had a ROI if they only speculated for a year and they stayed liquid, and then they see the price move, right? Because they haven't had a year or 2 or 3 years to generate yield or play a market cycle to play out for them. But what I'm getting at is if it became capital and then that capital got put to something useful that generates cash flow, or if they did buy real estate like their personal home and now they have a home, they have equity. They have all kinds of things that are coming along that are forcing up the asset value. Now they can choose to pull some of that capital out from real estate and put it back into something at a 1/19th of the sacrifice price. You know, right now I think Hex, or maybe not less than that, 1/6. So if Hex is, I haven't checked recently, it's like 3.5 cents or something like that. And I did the math not long ago about the sacrifice window a year ago, or close to a year ago, between the two products, PulseChain and PulseHex. I think my average sacrifice was somewhere around 19 cents, right? Mm-hmm. So that means that I'm locked in some ways, in narrative at least, at 19 cents. Like it was Hex, or it was whatever other coin got put in, right? It was capital that went into the sacrifice. And then that's kind of been locked, like it's locked in time in my mind, because it was a sacrifice. It may or may not have any kind of yield. I understand the narrative as far as that goes. But also, there's an expectation that hopefully this plays out well for people that are speculating on the sacrifice. And
so what you're basically saying is...
they help a lot in the marketing. That's my point. Sorry about that.
Right.
What you say?
No, so what we're saying basically is, doesn't matter what's happening with the price right now, the utility is still there, the tool is still performing regardless what the price is. You're still getting the yield, and people will go where they are treated best in terms of the actual code, basically, and it's no third party or whatever the case might be. So that's I guess that's usually the question we try to ask. The narrative before was basically was Hex is the new gold or the improved Bitcoin in terms, especially I think there's so many ways we can go in terms of how decorrelated it is from the market, but maybe so far right now, maybe that's not only the price where we're going to talk about that decorrelation. Maybe there's the utility, the tool itself, and the lower risk you got when you were actually staked and getting your yield. But thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. In the middle of the party, you got your info. Appreciate it. A lot of alpha. Pretty sure all the listeners are actually appreciating. Thank you so much. Appreciate it for coming on.
Yeah, Gary, thanks for stopping in.
Later, Gary.
All right, I'll talk to you guys later. Ciao.
Take care.
Take care. So, baby Motley, I guess.
Same question.
Let's harass
same
you
question.
with
Yeah.
question
Is the decorrelation only with the price? Is it the tool? Is that
a narrative that really makes sense? Because I really want to delve into this because the nuance of this, because this was a big narrative. I mean, we're YouTubers. We've been around, right? Like but now we see Hex is dumping right alongside the rest of the market. So does it really make sense to place so much emphasis on that narrative moving forward? Is Hex truly really largely decorrelated?
And so maybe before you answer, maybe to give you a premise of where we usually stand, me and Brent, because we do have a lot of these back and forth. Okay, what we're trying to say is that the biggest thing is we're saying that there, if anything, in terms of tokenomics and fundamentals, right? Everyone's staked, right? That's taking a lot of selling pressure off the market, and the price is expected to continue, or at least have the least impact when the whole market is falling. Everyone's kind of expecting Hex to maintain some sort of a price, not necessarily just keep going up, obviously, but when we drop, we don't drop from 50 cents to 3 cents, basically, because of the fundamentals, because of the staking, because of the narrative that, hey, this is where you store your money at. And what do you think about that?
Yeah, so as far as the 95% down narrative, I think that one right there, I would say that we've been upfront, and Richard's probably one of the few founders that's actually honest about it and even put it on his damn website. It's just like, hey, all this shit goes down 95% at some point. Like, this is the volatility, the highly speculative asset class that we're in. But for that downside volatility we have the highest upside. We have the fastest appreciating asset. Like, there's a lot of good things that come with that. Now, as far as the correlation goes, yes, I would probably... So there's a couple things, right? So like, I've seen Hex act very differently than most of the crypto space. Like we've pumped when the rest of the market's not pumping. We've started to decline before the rest of the market started to decline. We almost seem to be like a leading indicator of the crypto space, which is kind of interesting. So are we 100% decorrelated? No. Are we 100% correlated? Probably no as well, right? What I do see happening right now. It's just we're going into one of the most massive macroeconomic bear markets that we've seen in a very long time, probably up to the point of 2008. And nothing escapes that black hole, right? Like, I don't care how good the asset is, even if it is the best asset, and we just haven't gained that adoption, that asymmetry hasn't quite shifted in perspective yet, that Hex is one of the best created assets in existence. Not enough people know about it. We're still struggling to get through gates and adoption, and we're going to go down with the rest of the market just like anyone else. I mean, everything's going down. Stocks are going to go down. Real estate's going to go down. Crypto's going to go down. Where Hex becomes appealing, and you have to have a very good understanding of what Hex is one of the big issues that we're seeing right now in this DeFi space, or what we like to call DeFi space, is these lending platforms, these hedge funds that essentially are using other people's funds to speculate and earn yield, give you a lesser yield and make money off that, right? And we've seen that house of cards, those dominoes start to collapse. And I'm certain at some point we're going to delve deep into that. But that is where Hex is unique. That's where it does offer you a decorrelation. It gives you a way to earn yield safely in this bear market that we are heading to. Do enough people know about it? Do enough people understand it? And that's what's the most important part, is the education, the stuff we're doing on the stream, so more people can find a product like Hex to be a safe haven for their funds, to still earn yield and just not rely on price appreciation like Bitcoin does. It is the optimized and revolutionary product in my eyes of store value that Bitcoin wants to be, right? Like, it is the evolution of the 10 plus years that Bitcoin's been alive. Hex is that next step in evolution. And with that revolutionary product that you see in this space, like, it's going to receive the most pushback, just like Bitcoin did with traditional finance back in the day, just like Ethereum did within the own crypto space, and now Hex. It's the same thing. You see the most pushback and the most fighting and the most resistance against the stuff that really does change the space. And what are we seeing fall apart right now? It's all these centralized exchanges, all these lending platforms, all these hedge funds that manage people's money, and then they go insolvent, and they're like, you know what? You don't have access to your money anymore. We're going to pay off our debts first, or try to, with your money. Hope there's something left by the end of this carnage. Good luck. It was all good until it wasn't, kind of narrative, right? So is Hex correlated? I'd say it's again, you fall into that kind of gray area. It's like, yes, I think there is some decorrelation there. Is it enough to escape the kind of macro event that we're heading towards? Probably not. We're going to see the same pain. But does it offer you the ability to still earn amazing yield trustlessly, and it's just you and the code? Yeah. Where can you get that anywhere else? Nowhere. It's just on us to get that education out there.
Right. And that's what I think. Obviously, every narrative we got is always going to get tested with time, right? And we're seeing that one of the biggest tests looks like right now. You could we always talk about that, is that you can, all of crypto falls. Which one do you want to hold? It's the same thing like marriage. That's like the best analogy. A bunch of partners out there for you. The choices are everywhere. Except for Brendan, obviously. Everybody goes.
I was about to compliment your analogy. I was going to say it was a great analogy over here until you started calling me out. Because no, it's like, who do you want to hold through thick and thin?
Exactly. Who do you want to go through shit with, right? And I think that gives people more and more. Maybe the decorrelation narrative now got tested more and more. It's more like, hey, looks like the price will go down. We saw it going down more than like 10x or 20x right now with Hex. Keep that in mind. But at least you're getting your yield. That's the deal you got. You want to be within this, or you want to be in Luna, or you want to be in Celsius.
That's the game. That's the game you play with all these assets, and that especially applies to crypto, because we see that 95 to 99% of this shit doesn't come back. It just doesn't, right? Like, even if it does survive enough, like, you just might be stagnant for the next bull cycle. And who wants to be stagnant and the asset class with the most upside potential out of anything that exists today? You just don't want to be in that position. So that's why I put so much emphasis on it. You have to pick the right asset. That's a key component when investing in this very speculative market. It's like, you have to find the asset that gives you the best chance, that reduces your risk the most, to come back after such a detrimental event like this macro event that we're facing right now, with the rate hikes coming as we speak, the stock market's plummeting, the real estate starting to plummet, crypto going into who knows how long of a bear market. You have to find the asset that has enough legs to get back up. And if you were to ask me, that's Hex.
Definitely.
Yeah, and we'll look. Speaking of risk as well, Jake, I think rugged himself for a second there, but he's back.
Yeah, glad to have you back, man.
Jake,
Gatekeepers.
are you buying this argument? Like how do you feel about this discussion about Hex and it being decorrelated?
I have a very unique perspective, I think, because I'm not a Hex OG. I've made like $0 off Richard Hart, so I feel like I have a very objective look on the asset. And I'm gonna say some things, and they're good. They're very good for the asset, but they will sound like FUD. Well, they're not. So let's kind of get that clear.
Well, you better watch your mouth, man. You better watch your mouth.
It's actually good. Let me kind of go through it.
He's trying to pave his way through. You better watch your mouth.
So,
go
the
ahead.
way Messon said it is the tokenomics of Hex. You have people that take that economic value, they lock it up for a very long period of time in return for yield based on the inflation and stuff like that. That's a very strong thing. But Richard Hart is also very smart to realize that an asset can only go up a lot if it has a small liquidity pool. And that small liquidity pool is its strength and its weakness. Meaning that when it's extremely volatile to the upside, but it's also extremely volatile to the downside. So even though most of the coins are locked and out of circulation, you only need a small amount of coins to actually hurt the price a lot because of the small liquidity pool. And that's why I feel like the reason I think Hex is going to survive is not necessarily because of Richard Hart. I believe it's because of the community. Because these are all like speculative assets. Everything in crypto is less than $1 trillion market cap nowadays. This is just pure speculation, and I feel like that the coins with the strongest communities will survive, and then the coins with the strongest tokenomics will come back the hardest. They'll come back with a vengeance. They might go down a little bit more than the market, but they will go up a lot more than the market. So I actually like Hex. I do. I actually I want to DCA into Hex at these prices. I think anywhere between like one, not financial advice, purely entertainment purposes, but like anywhere between like 1 cent and 4 cents. I think it's magnificent. I like it.
So that was the follow-up question. Do you think we're going to sub 1 cent? I guess we'll ask you both that question. Do you think we're going to 1 cent?
That was great.
I don't know what you're talking about, man. But I mean, man, even looking at this right now, from now to all-time highs, you know, if Hex goes to the 1 cent, we're looking at a good, nice little 50x right there, man.
And guys, look, you know, Bitcoin's at Jesus, it's at 20,600 right now. It's dropping hard. Oh, it's dropping hard. But okay, so you know, we're all kind of understanding that, you know, there's a real possibility of 11K, 12K, 15K. You know, if Bitcoin's at anywhere near those prices, I mean, where's Hex at? You know, how low could Hex go? Do you guys have opinions on that? Are we going to see 2.5, 1.5 sub penny Hex? How far do you think we can go? And what do you think about an optimal accumulation strategy? Should we wait? Should you DCA? What do you guys think? Maybe we can start off with Jake.
So in these kind of market conditions, you don't know where the bottom of the market is, because everybody remembers in the bull market, everybody was like, oh, blow off top in December. Yeah, that
right. Yeah,
very, very nice, guys. Amazing. The entire market kind of agreed on that, and like 100K Bitcoin and stuff like that. So I don't believe anybody has a crystal ball. So I believe anywhere between like 1 to 4 cents is just dollar cost average territory. Have an amount that you want to put in, and then just do it like 10 to 20% of the time. And I think that's the play that you're going to be the most happy with. I like simple strategies.
Molly, give us financial advice.
Yeah,
gotcha, bro.
Yeah. What is your crystal ball saying?
It kind of goes back to what we've been saying, right? Like, I want 1 cent so bad. I want it really bad. And I know a lot of other players that want it really bad as well, a lot of money. And so it kind of makes me fearful that we might not get it, because I've gotten to the point where I just see the opportunity and I know how much upside is there. So like my sweet spot, I would love 1 cent, and anything below might be wishful thinking, but maybe we get it, right? And I'll reserve that thought process as I evaluate everything else going on in the future, right? Like after the stream, we'll see what the new rate hikes are. We'll see how the rest of the markets react. So again, like Jake was saying, no one has a crystal ball. So the best you can do is make these educated decisions for yourself. And the same thing that applies with me. That's a strategy that's worked out since the beginning of Hex, was just DCA. And that's DCAing over the past 2.5 years. And I've continued to DCA, and I've ended up investing a shit ton of money towards like 40 something cents. But now I brought that average down, and you're able to bring down that average so much more quickly when you make buys down around this range, when you're looking at like almost 10x lower the original price, right? So like you can narrow that gap of what your cost average is at these lower prices. So like I do agree. I think 4 to 1 cent is a great range. I mean, for me, and this is another thing, is like everyone's everyone's strategy is unique, right? It has to be suited for you. I do have a very large position of Hex. So my DCA at this point is much more of a focused window of a couple lower price targets where it makes more sense for me, just because I already have a pretty large bag of Hex. And whereas, like Jake was saying, no one knows the bottom. So what if we do go lower? Well, then I can if I can get that 1 cent Hex or sub 1 cent Hex, if I'm ever so fortunate enough, I can amplify my bag X amount more, right? Like once you start getting that 1 cent range and below, it gets crazy. And that's why I know how much the herd mentality wants that 1 cent. And do we get it? Maybe we don't. So maybe we split the difference. Maybe we go to like 1.6, 1.5, somewhere in that range. And then we bounce hard. Again, it's that liquidity thing, which it's a double-edged sword. It cuts both ways. It cuts to the upside and the downside. So right now we're feeling the downside. But when that fear switches to greed, then we rocket right back up. And did you miss your opportunity? Did you not DCA? And that's why ultimately DCA, having that plan going forward, is I think the ultimate strategy where you just don't miss that opportunity. And you just didn't realize it was an opportunity at that time.
Yeah. And let me know if you guys agree or think the way I think about this makes any kind of sense. The way I'm kind of viewing things is, sure, I've been kind of DCAing, but I've also been kind of making sure that I have a good amount to buy somewhere where I think might be a local bottom. The way I've kind of been thinking about this is, look, if Bitcoin ever gets anywhere near the mid to low teens, at that point, I would feel comfortable going in heavier into Hex, whether that's 2.5 cent, 1.5 cent, 1 cent, or sub cent. That's how kind of I'm currently viewing things. 15K to 11K. If Bitcoin's anywhere around there, that's where I feel going heavy into Hex makes sense. Although, like you just said, no one has a crystal ball. We don't know if that'll just be a wick. We don't know if that'll even happen for sure. So if you dollar cost average, then you for sure are getting exposure all throughout the way down. Jake, do you have any intuitions as to maybe what you think makes some sense here? Do you think maybe putting in some effort to try and time a market makes sense? Or do you think the dollar cost average route makes more sense?
Oh yeah, dollar cost average route. Because right now we're already, I think, missing is
You market execute the whole thing when you think it's the bottom, and you leverage it, and that's it. There's no.
Brandon was loving that muted message version. He's like, "Yo, get more of this. don't let him know his mic's off."
I didn't even realize, bro.
Just going in.
Yeah, I was going out. I was screaming. They're knocking on my door here, man. We're good. Don't worry. Yeah, go ahead, man.
What was the? Before Messi went on the ramp, where were we at?
You know what? Look. I got Brendan asked a very good question. Okay,
thank you.
But I think there's a question that no one has been asking much in the community. And guys, if you got some good questions for us, put them in the chat. I see some people posting some like nudes and links to some stuff. Don't press on that. Also, make sure you like, you comment, you share, you subscribe, and all those things, man. But Hex is down, right? We're looking at a massive price appreciation potential, right? We're looking at least if it goes back to the 50 cent region, or if it goes to the dollar, we're looking at hundreds of X's at this point, right? My main question is regarding PulseChain right now, and we're gonna have E-Hex and P-Hex, right? Should people be buying E-Hex right now? Or the fact that P-Hex is coming up, are people gonna have more incentive for P-Hex at one point? Is it gonna be more expensive on that side just because it's a better Hex? Where would you put your money?
So are you asking if they should blow their load or if they should edge? Is that what you're
Nah, I'm saying that E-Hex is not gonna be as in terms of value proposition.
Yes, that's what he's asking, Brandon.
Right? Well, one way, shape, or form.
Okay, so I'll make this comment because it ties in with what you're saying. So essentially what you're asking is like, hey, do we buy this dip in E-Hex now, or are you presented with a different opportunity when PulseChain goes live? You can buy Hex, which was essentially P-Hex, which will be the version of Hex on PulseChain, or maybe PulseChain, PulseX. And this is why every individual's plan has to be unique to them, right? You have to do what makes sense to you. And like I was saying earlier, I have a DCA range, but mine's a lot less and narrow than say maybe Jake's, because he's not an Hex OG. He doesn't have as large of a bag as I do. So I have a certain target that makes sense for me, where I can acquire enough Hex and it outweighs just the opportunity. The upside is just too great. Like we start talking that low 1 cent range, like it amplifies my bag so much. It's a no brainer. Now, if I don't hit my DCA targets, what do I still have available to me? And it's what you brought up, is I have a whole new ecosystem that's lost. So what do I have advantage over everyone else that's been DCAing over this time? Maybe they blew too much of their load, blew their wad early, too much dry powder early, and they don't have anything left. And we go into this new ecosystem. And let's say everyone's desperate for money, right? And PulseChain and PulseX doesn't run up and does its first 10, 20x, 50x in the first time. Maybe we actually get a discount to sacrifice prices, and everyone's left there with their pockets out and they don't have any money left, right? So yes, I didn't hit my DCA targets on Hex, but now I'm presented with a new opportunity because I stuck true to what I set out as far as my plan early on. And now I have a bunch of dry powder ready to take on this new opportunity. And that's whatever the new ecosystem presents with me. Is it presenting a cheap Hex on PulseChain? Cool, I'll buy that. Is it presenting a cheap PulseX on PulseChain? Okay, I'll buy that. Is it cheap Pulse? Okay, I'll buy that. And it's just, again, I believe in the ecosystem. I believe the value propositions for everything are on point. And as Richard Hart delivers what he did with Hex, you're going to make a crazy return. So look for the deal, look for the dip, and stick to your plan. What makes sense to you? Think about it wisely and follow through with it, because if you don't hit your targets, so be it. You'll be presented with a new opportunity. And that's why this time that we're presented with now, yes, you might see it as a very bleak and bear market and everything's dying and crashing, is there's multiple opportunities coming down the pipeline. Even if you miss one or two, you have the ability to recover and make amazing gains. Just do what makes sense for you, what's presented to you. The opportunities that we're going to see over the next year are going to be absolutely astounding, I believe. And just don't falter. Don't let your emotions take the wheel at some point. Stick to the plan that you set out for yourself, and it'll work out in the long run.
I think you just made a great argument for timing the market there. Because if you time it wrong, you essentially got an insurance policy. Hey, if I time the Hex dip wrong, well, hey, I can just buy PulseChain, PulseX, or P-Hex when she goes live. So I think you just solidified my opinion more of attempting to time the market.
This guy is obsessed with timing the market, guys. You gotta let him have it, man.
But that's
100%, man. That's a very, that's an interesting point of view, Motley, because you're looking at, look, I know both products are good. I know E-Hex is good. I know P-Hex is good. P-Hex is probably have a bit more hype behind it. So I'm looking for whatever the best deal presents itself at the time. At this moment, I got cheap E-Hex, I'm buying E-Hex. If I'm getting cheap P-Hex, I'm buying that, because I do believe in both products and I want to kind of diversify more. Jake, maybe a question also to you that follows up on that. Don't you think that we're thinning out the market? We got double the supply now. We need almost double the amount of people trying to buy, and now you got a narrative that's gonna come up soon, is that P-Hex is actually better than E-Hex, right? I'm not spreading FUD, man. I'm just asking questions.
He's asking the important questions. So yeah, I do. Yeah, it's gonna require like close to twice the buy pressure, I would say. But I think because it cancels out with PulseChain and PulseX, it's gonna bring in such a massive audience that I think it's not gonna have that much of an impact. That's kind of my take on it. Yeah. Like it's a thing for sure. People cannot deny that the fact that the supply basically that gets doubled is undeniable. And every asset on crypto that is in ERC20 on Ethereum, it's not only Hex. So you cannot be like, Hex has double the supply. Nah, you all have double the supply. So
yeah,
that's true.
And you do.
Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. Okay. You do run in, and this is the problem, right? Like, there's no way to beat around the bush. You do have split buying pressure now, right? You do have two products, two different chains. And do we know what the liquidity pairing is going to be? Do we know what the incentives are going to be, the rewards to maybe provide the pairing? We don't. So we can adjust our views and what we think is going to play out as time goes on. But ultimately, the way I'm looking at it now is they're both money printers. One might go on a discount, sure. Ultimately, for the future right now, Ethereum's it's expensive, right? So PulseChain is here to solve a problem. And where am I going to direct my onboards? It's going to be the Hex on PulseChain. It just is, because that's the way they can be most cost efficient with their money. Now, there is a couple issues with that I think the community is working on. I don't know how soon they come to market, though. Is like, I really think one of the big pivotal things that we need is just an on-ramp directly from Pulse or into the PulseChain ecosystem from fiat, right? Like, because otherwise you still have to navigate through the Ethereum waters. You're still going to get hit with the fees and the issues that we're essentially moving to PulseChain on for. So can the community solve that? I know of a couple personal projects that are working on that. Hopefully they get done in time. If we can solve that and we can go directly into our ecosystem, if we can onboard people directly into a better way of doing crypto from the start, I think that's absolutely massive. And like, yes, that's going to probably cause the price of Hex on PulseChain to do much better than the price of Hex on Ethereum. Now, is Ethereum broken? No. Is Ethereum still the go-to number one layer one in all of crypto? Yeah. So why would you just throw away a money printer, something the exact same code that works just as well on that system? Why would you just throw it away, right? Like, why would you just lose that bag? That narrative doesn't make sense to me either. You might see longer stakes. You might see it become more rare as PulseChain, since the fees aren't as important. You see much shorter stakes. Maybe there's more liquid available on the market. These are the dynamics. We're just going to have to update our worldview as time goes on. But I think it's just, there's a couple things that we just need to see to play out. Just keep an open mind and don't bet on one 100%, because if you're wrong, then you're just out of the game, right? Like, you just, everything you've worked for up to this point, you're just out. There's no need to take 100% bet either way.
Yeah, and if I can add to what you're saying as well, guys, if you're staked 5, 10, 15 years, during that time frame, I mean, Ethereum might figure out sharding. They might figure out scaling. You know, second layer scaling solutions, might continue to get further adopted. But again, you know, in a short time frame, probably not. But if you're staked out 10, 15 years, at that point, I would not completely dismiss the Ethereum team's capability to bring some kind of scaling to Ethereum on a 10 to 15 year long time frame. So again, I wouldn't completely dismiss Ethereum as well. But I want to ask actually everyone here, because I know Messon, you're gonna have something to say about this as well. I recently, on yesterday's live stream, or I went live a day or two ago, I kind of officially talked about how I view price predictions with Hex moving forward. And I want to ask you guys if the way I view this makes sense to you. So I've come out with a price prediction for Hex for next cycle. I think there could be a case for us doing a 1000x from wherever this cycle low ends up being, because of the way Bitcoin has behaved in the past. So, what is Hex most like? Richard Hart said, it's close to a CD, but really it's kind of Bitcoin with a proof of work change. So if we're if the thing that Hex is most like is Bitcoin, well, what did Bitcoin do its first time around? First cycle, we had about 50,000% growth. Second cycle, it was about 12,000% growth. So just for easy math, that's about 1/5 as good as we did the first time. So, we're going to have diminishing returns. First time 50,000, second time 12,000. So we kind of extrapolate that to Hex. Hex did a 10,000x first time around. Well, what's 1/5 of that? It would be a 2,000x. But the supply of Hex is going to double, so we cut that in half to a 1,000x. So if Hex goes on to behave similarly to how Bitcoin did the first two cycles, then I think we could do this time around, so next cycle, a 1000x from wherever this cycle all-time low ends up being to the all-time high 2025, 2026. Do you guys think thinking that way makes any kind of sense?
Got the first dibs, Jake.
I don't know.
Does it even basically asking,
are we
gonna do 1000x on Hex from this price level?
Or does it even make sense to think about price predictions in that kind of way, or is it so unpredictable that even thinking about it, that doesn't make sense?
The thing that you kind of have with Hex is the idea of yield. So you don't even have to do a 10,000x, 1,000x. You should just do like I think 650x if you time that by like 140%. So you don't even need to do a 1,000x. So I think that makes it a lot more realistic. And I also kind of have a weird view on Ethereum. Everybody is so optimistic about the future of Ethereum. But if you understand anything about supply and demand, I think Ethereum is going to be even more wrecked 8 years from now. I don't think sharding is going to be here for like another 10 years. Have you seen how long they have been working on this merge?
Yeah.
6 years.
It just got delayed. The difficulty volume got delayed. Yeah.
It's absolutely wild. So basically, and Rich was the guy that opened my eyes up to this. Ethereum is just a supply and demand play. The moment the merge is going to happen, there's going to be less inflation minted, which means Ethereum price probably going to go up. The higher the Ethereum price goes, the higher the gas fees go, and the more demand comes in the next bull market, the higher the fees goes. I'm making a claim that the gas fees will probably hit like $2,000 in the next bull market. That would not surprise me at all.
That's like a 10x from what where it peaked around this time around.
Exactly. Look at the past bull market. I wasn't around in like a 17 bull market. I knew about crypto, but I wasn't like in it. And it was not $280 or like $600 on Uniswap then. So it's not a weird assumption to make. So I think the Ethereum chain, I'm scared of it, man. And that's why I'm so bullish on PulseChain. That's one of the big reasons. Because now everybody's like, oh, Ethereum low gas fees. Just wait until the next bull market, guys. You're gonna all run towards PulseChain.
Yeah,
I think it's going to be the only safe haven.
So that's how you think about price. Okay, yeah.
I think what makes sense with what you said is these dips. The way to view them is it's just like the transference of wealth, right? The dips are coming from people selling at these lows because of fear, right? Like the markets are going to shit, crypto's going to shit. There's fear in the markets. People are willing to sell, and like OGs are still up 1,000x from the bottom, the all-time lows, right? Making these all-time lows does a couple things. It enables you to weed out some of the weaker hands and transfer it to the new hands, to the new people, the ones that have been wanting these prices, the stronger diamond hands that want to realize that next 100x, 1,000x, you name it, right? Those life-changing gains that we all experienced in the beginning when we got into Hex. People want to experience that as well. So you see a transference of wealth of people that have already seen amazing life-changing gains, and they're like, I'm okay. I can sell at these price levels and not care. Or maybe they want to insulate themselves and they're willing to sell at a pretty extreme loss from all-time highs. That's okay. That makes the run up that much more potent when we go into the next cycle. Transferring out of those larger players that have already seen some pretty life-changing gains, they're willing to give it up pennies of the dollars. You have the new generation coming in, adopting that, making their buys now, making their DCA now. So we have that much, it goes back to the liquidity play too, that we have that much more ability to run up crazy high this time because we've done that transference of wealth. We've had that massive dip, and that's what enables you to say that Hex did a 10,000x, right? It wasn't from launch. It was from our all-time lows. You need that 80-90% retracement. So then you can paint the chart from there and just like, okay, we did another 1,000x, another 2,000x. And that's the stuff that makes it possible. Is people that are willing to give up their positions now at a much lower rate. And then you have the newer generation coming in like, well, I'm willing to take that bet that Hex does do another 1,000x. And then like Jake said, you have the yield. So you don't even need to do 1,000x. You can buy your Hex coins, stake them out, and you need like 600 something X. And so it makes all these, what seems like crazy targets actually obtainable. And this is what's going to be interesting moving forward. It's going to be the same thing with PulseChain, PulseX, is when you snag these all-time lows, you have that crazy upside of doing your first 100x, your first 1,000x, 5,000x, 10,000x. Those numbers are very hard to obtain and reach. And really the only strategy that gets you there is the DCA. Otherwise, you're going to miss it because timing is very tough. But this is what enables us to realize that 1,000x. And I think Richard wants to brag about that, right? I would think he wants to brag about another 1,000x from the cycle, another 2,000x. I think it is possible with what we see playing out today. And it depends where we go, but it'll be interesting to watch play out. I think it's very reasonable on both sides. I think it could play out, and then maybe we don't get those kind of returns, but we'll just have to gauge our sentiment as time goes on. And we have more inputs, right?
Let's ask the Fudster, Messin. Is any of what I said make sense to you?
I'm good. If what?
Is any of what I said make sense to you? By the 1,000x from this cycle.
First of all, let me just get something. Nothing you say actually makes sense. So let's just get that out of the way. But this kind of like, I can get where you're coming from. So I will attempt to answer. Okay.
Okay, please.
To me, it's pretty simple. I usually filter out anything that could affect supply and demand. That's literally it. The X's game, the 10x, the 1,000x, and the 100x is supply and demand game mixed with how not perfectly, but how well do you actually not time, but where your entry's at. For example, meaning right now, we're looking at no matter whatever, even if it wasn't Hex, any other coin we're looking at right now. You saw a chart that went to 50 cents. It dropped right now to the 3 cent region. If, in my opinion, Hex right now, just literally, it can go tomorrow to 1 cent. we already dropped. If it goes to 1 cent, that's the 50x to the bottom. If you enter at that level, anything at 1 cent, extrapolate it back to the 50-cent region, that's the 50x.
Right.
To $1, that would be 100x. If it goes anywhere close
$10
to,
would be 1,000x.
it's anywhere
From 1
closer
penny
to
$10 would be 1,000x. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying, right? So to me, that's one of the things that's going to affect your price performance. But now when we look at supply and demand, I know for a fact there's a new chain coming up. Not only I got something, you know, which is a better, faster, cheaper hex that's going to come up, which I think the whole market is going to be looking at. I think the whole market is going to be having a more of a lenient way towards PulseChain hex. You got to add that into account. You got double the supply. People are going to be looking for, why would I buy E-Hex as opposed to P-Hex? That's one of your incentives right there. So we got that, you know, doubling of the supply. And we also got PulseChain in its own as a price opportunity. And we also got the fact that PulseX is one, you know, the biggest sacrifice we've seen so far within the ecosystem. So in my opinion, Hex right now at these levels can easily do 100x. I wouldn't say it would do 100x from, you know, or 1000x from the 50-cent region. I would be like, oh, that's a much harder game to get to. But if I'm looking at a cent, or 1 cent, or sub-cent Hex, easily, no problem. Especially when I just saw that I actually did a 50 cent. Just getting to the 50-cent region would get me anywhere to the 100x or 100x basically. So, my opinion, there's a lot of play right now. Place your bets accordingly. That's what we got coming up. No one knows what's going on, but the price performance of Hex right now is looking very, very interesting for me, man.
So folks, you heard it here. Madsen was beating around the bush, but he agrees with me. He said it was ultimately realistic, and it is, man. If we go to
from
penny,
a 1 cent, of course,
$10, that's 1,000x. From penny to $10 is 1,000x.
Right.
Yeah, and just to put a little bit of a OG hexagon perspective on it, like you always have to readjust your perspective, because when we all got into hex, I mean, when we're in the lows, guys, it was 0.000. I can't remember, it was 3 or 4 zeros, 5 something. Yeah, it's crazy. And so like I remember 1 cent initially just seemed astronomical, right? Like, I don't know if we're ever going to get there. Godwell came in. We never came back to those price levels. Like, holy shit, maybe we can obtain 1 cent someday. We hit 1 cent, wild. We rocketed from 1 cent to 2 cent, right back down to 1 cent. Then we started trading multiple cents. Then we started trading at nickels, then dimes. Then we're up to 50 cents, like targets that, like, yeah, we joke around with early on. I'm like, man, can you imagine? I mean, look at it. $10 invested at all-time lows would have been $100,000 at all-time highs. Like, to wrap your mind around those numbers, it doesn't really compute. It doesn't make sense. And as an OG, you have to constantly like reevaluate and readjust, because that next 1,000x, that next 10,000x target, if you have the right product, if you have the right market fit, if there's still enough asymmetry. I mean, guys, we have less than 100,000 people in this community. Like, realistically, we really do. I like to use the active stakers metric and the staker app, and we have less than 100,000 active stakers. And, you know, people like me and everyone else have multiple wallets. I mean, we're looking at a community that's somewhere between 50 and 75,000, probably realistically, that's involved in this ecosystem. And we managed to do a 10,000x. What other coins outside of like Bitcoin can really say that? Like, and we have so much upside potential still because of the gatekeeping, because of the lack of education, because people just doesn't know of its existence. We've done so much with so little, and it goes back to that liquidity too. And you really realize how powerful that is and what it can do to the upside or to the downside. Right now, we're experiencing that max pain, that downside. But I guarantee you, at some point, you will experience that upside. And no one really knows how hard we could rip. We could see another 1,000x. We could see another 10,000x. And it's hard to wrap your mind around those numbers.
And I think one of the biggest unknown factors that you just touched upon was the fact that Hex was gatekept. I mean, you know, Cardano, Solana, all these coins did its 100x while being completely blasted to every single retail person in crypto. Hex at a 10,000x while being completely ignored and dismissed and having bad publicity in media for the most part throughout this entire cycle.
Tens of thousands of people. That's it.
Yeah, and when PulseChain launches, a lot of more people are going to be introduced to Hex with a lot more positive light. So it's like, sure, Hex had its one cycle, but it's had its one cycle while nobody knew about it. There was no real exposure. So that's a very, very large factor that kind of makes me a little bit more optimistic about the potential future of Hex, even though we already have this price appreciation, even though we already have all these people in the system. Nobody knows about crypto, and first off, the people in crypto, nobody knows about Hex. So again, I think regardless of the 1000x, 100x, 10,000x, the future is most definitely bright.
So the Fed increased interest rates by 0.75.
Yeah.
7.5. Yeah,
Yep.
I think that was the polling favorite last time I checked.
Good.
All right, let's
I want to
look
get
at
it
the
over
crash.
with.
Yeah, more pain quickly.
Exactly. Just rip the band-aid. Just
Max
Yes.
pain.
Do
0.75.
Yes.
Do another
Just
point.
give it to
S&P is down on the day. UVXY,
Hard and fast, baby.
which measures volatility, is up. Yeah, I imagine Bitcoin's probably.
Well,
Folks,
the thing is, I was
Bitcoin's
kind of looking
okay.
at some charts when it came to inflation and stuff like that, and basically what usually happens in the markets, including the S&P 500, is when inflation peaks, you don't have to wait for inflation to come down for the markets to go up. As long as it's peaked and on the way down, the markets go up. So we don't need to wait for inflation to recover. The bear market bottom could be. I don't like
Careful.
giving predictions.
Give prediction. Bust out that crystal ball.
As long as if inflation peaks and it starts to go down, that's when the markets can start recovering. I'm not saying bull market scenario, but just accumulation zone and maybe slightly up, which is kind of good, I just can they just increase it to like 3%, just 300
Go
basis
for it.
points, just get it over.
Yeah, just punch you in the face and be done with it.
Exactly, man. Jesus,
Yeah.
all this slow bleeding shit.
Yeah. So look, folks, we're on up on an hour here. Maybe we can kind of begin to kind of finalize things here. I want to ask, like for me personally, and this is something me and Messin debate about all the time. It's perhaps been one of our biggest points of contention for a while, is the nature of these markets, and does it make sense to think about them as cyclical? Is that a useful way of thinking about them? Or is it more useful to simply follow quantitative easing, inflation rates, more money being printed, how much money is entering this market, the on-chain metrics? Does that make sense to follow? Or does it make sense, and is it useful to keep in mind some kind of rough 4-year cycle where, the bull market being roughly 1 year after the latest Bitcoin halving and that kind of thing?
And would you think about the moon and the ocean cycles as well? Do you take that into account?
And astrology.
Yeah,
And
astrology.
all of our star signs. God damn it, I forgot the question. What was it again?
Like,
I feel like I always fuck that up, man.
No, yeah, you do
always
fuck it up.
But
the
It's all
moons,
your
bro.
fault.
The moon and the stars.
Just completely off topic.
Yeah.
But the moons, bro.
I'm asking, what's your star sign? No, look, because I'll tell you where this stems from. Me and Messin have this big debate often where I really believe in crypto being cyclical, very cyclical. I think it's proven, and I think it's useful to think
yeah.
about that. Messin, kind of, if I can, you step in here, but from what I understand, you seem to think that it's problematic to think of crypto as being cyclical. I think you think it's far more important to keep in mind kind of these macro conditions. What are the interest rates? Is there quantitative easing? Like again, you correct me if I'm wrong.
I
here,
just
but
think it's like the best analogy is like you're trying to time an extremely volatile market. Like it's like if you're day trading
Right.
or whatever the case might be, you're seeing massive swings and you're trying to say like, oh hey, this trend line works or that trend line works. Like to me, it's more like it's very early. It's extremely. It's not mature. It's infant. Not a lot of money in, and it goes wild. It's like the Wild West. So to try to encompass, because us humans, the way I see it, we try to find patterns in everything, and we try to make sense of everything. And I think it's there's so much adoption, new companies coming in, massive institutions. You got the interest rates, you got Bitcoin doing a moon cycle, you got all of this happening. Trying to wrap it all under like one umbrella is kind of, I just got hacked, man. It's kind of crazy, But again, there is something to it. There's something to it. There's something
Right.
to it, to the cycles. So I'll give you that. Before
or
you start
will
crying and
will
shit. Right now on
Bitcoin-
the stream.
We'll just let you guys debate. Go.
Well, no, I want to hear what you guys think, because we've had this debate a million times. But like,
I know.
yeah, or are Bitcoin and its havings continue to be will they continue to be a large driving force?
So I think it's kind of funny. I think I saw a tweet with a guy like these interest rate hikes and the Fed like swinging around is like giving more ammo to the Fourier cycle conspiracy theorists, and it's all like very coincidental, you know. I think Messa has a good point in saying it's a very young market with under $1 trillion. The stock market is $100 trillion. I think we'll get less volatility to the upside, but also less volatility to the downside. I think that's when the cycles start dissipating. But that might just be like the $10 trillion mark, maybe $40 trillion mark. I think as long as we're in an immature market, I think we're going to be very tight to the cycles, to be honest. I think it's that simple. Because this is a market driven by narrative. That is all it is. There is no intrinsic value. Stuff like that, like all of these memes that like people like using. But you don't need to. The dollar doesn't have any intrinsic value, you know? I think that's more than enough to... But I think that's why we're stuck in the cycles. I think the moment it becomes a mature market, that's when we start going out of the cycles.
I agree, but at the same time, then I'll take up like Brandon's side of the argument. It's just like why fight what like history presents you, right? Like as of now, what we've had past data to go off of, you can use that to infer where we're going in the future until that actually changes. And I think that's what Jake was talking about, is we're maybe starting to finally approach that threshold of changing out these cycles that we've become familiar with over time. And so you get that meme of that girl with like, why not both, right? Like use both metrics, use your brain, use logic, use what history has presented with you in the past, and just be educated and guard yourself either way. And like, I think it boils down to what we've talked about this entire stream. It's just like, pick your strategy, use as many factors as possible. DCA, I think ultimately most of us would argue, is the ultimate strategy moving forward in an asset class like this. And you don't know, right? Like I would err on the caution of giving the past data from what history has provided you to air your decisions on, but don't be ignorant to what's going on around you. If shit is changing, be ready to start changing your view as well, right? And Richard talks about it, changing your worldview as the facts are presented to you. As of now, have we had enough facts presented us to change the cycle? No, we haven't. So cycles help you plan for this. If you've been following them right, like maybe you would have more dry powder, right? Maybe you would have sold closer to the top. You'd be more primed to take advantage of this bear market that we're now in. But stuff changes. And I think I agree with Jake, as time goes on, what the markets that we're familiar with now in crypto could very likely change in the future. Will that happen? We'll see as time goes on, right? And that's the best determining factor, is the past history that we have to bring forth. So it's never close your mind off to one or the other. I think that's a good reoccurring theme we've touched on multiple times during the stream.
Yeah. And if I could maybe kind of close the gap here. Look, I would agree that I think we might all agree that over the long term, the influence that Bitcoin has on the entirety of the crypto market is likely to diminish over the long term as this ecosystem grows and matures and the different use cases get more separated out, and as we become more and more decorrelated from the stock market, hopefully over time. All that is likely to be a very, very gradual process, in my opinion. And so to completely dismiss kind of this, how we've behaved in these rough Fourier cycles where we have peaks and valleys, where the valleys is roughly where the halving is, and the peaks are roughly a year plus after the latest Bitcoin halving. I still think that's likely to play some kind of influence moving forward, and the macro state of the economy will influence the shape of our peaks moving forward. And that's kind of how I think about it, where it's important to think about kind of the macro system, and the macro system will change the hills, but there will still be those hills and there will still be those valleys, because for the time being, Bitcoin is the large driving force in the market, and I think it will have an effect. Even if it's a diminishing one, it will be gradual over the long term.
Well, agreed, man. Look, I know we fought a lot.
Look at that common ground. Let's go.
I still don't give a shit about what you just said. Okay?
It's the moons, bro.
I guess we're not reaching a resolution, man. That's what it is.
Oh man.
No, 100%, guys. We're reaching an hour, and wow, time passed by pretty quick, man. I guess it's I don't know if you guys got anything else to add here. Any last?
Yeah, anything you want to get off your chest? Talk shit.
I mean, Motley, you got your sick background. We get it. All right, we get it. It looks nice. I actually love it. It's so good. But yeah,
I have
man, any
something.
last words you got here?
Yeah, I have something. My channel is about to reach 2,000 subscribers. I'm like 8 away, so that would be pretty cool. Just like 8
Everyone,
people.
go subscribe to Jake Sharp. I'm gonna put a link both in the comments and in the description shortly here.
Oh, you didn't have it in the description. Scam.
Hey, bro. That's crazy.
Yeah, confirmed.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Do you have
That's
a channel,
awesome.
by the way, Motley?
Yeah, same thing. You guys can follow me, Molly Investor. Go push Jake over to 2,000 subs. Definitely deserves it. Super smart guy. Came in like a rocket on the scene, and like I think that kind of goes with like your MMA background and just you can tell right away you're driven. So go
Hold
follow
on.
him.
You got an MMA background?
What's that?
Yeah, I used to be a competition fighter, but that was grappling, and I
oh,
trained
yeah.
a bit of MMA.
Dude,
yeah.
go check out the shit. This man's pulling out some moves.
Shit. Okay.
But me, the one thing I do want to highlight is me and my buddy Tendies and Nikki Crypto, we're working on something in the background that's really special and we're putting a lot of time and effort into. So if you want news and updates on that, go follow us at t.me/Legion VC News. We're working really hard on a project that I think is going to bring a lot of value to our ecosystem and outside of our ecosystem. So if you want news and updates to that, go follow us in the Telegram, t.me/Legion VC News.
There you
Dude,
have
that's
it,
the thing that I
guys.
love about this community. Like, this community is a community of builders. There's a
Yeah.
lot of people building, man. I love
That's
it.
why we win. That's why we win, bro.
Definitely. A lot of creativity too, man. You got to give it. There's a lot. Honestly, this might be the most, I don't know. I'm just saying. I think NFTs are going to be massive on PulseChain, man. I think the Hex community in general, there's a lot of art, man. There's a lot of like personalized shit that's been going on. And I really do think NFTs will be big there, just especially all the artsy people we got in the space. Not only programmers, man. So it's pretty nice to see. But guys,
There's some cool stuff with NFTs too that's coming. Like I think it's funny, right? Because you do have the randomly generated JPEGs, which people love and they're fun, and there's some backdoor deals that go behind this. But there is some cool stuff you can do with it. It's just is the coding, and like Jake can probably speak on this as a developer. Like it takes time to catch up with what's actually possible, and I think there is some cool stuff that we'll see in the future, and it won't just only be just JPEGs randomly generated
Right.
at some point. So
something with utility.
It's the first
Yeah.
version of the technology. It's going to evolve.
Right.
Yeah, 100%, yeah.
yeah, we got a ways to go before it's just crypto kitties.
Of course. Okay, well,
Guys, great
there
live
you have
stream.
it, people.
Thanks for coming
Thank
on,
you
guys.
guys
Really
so much.
appreciate your time. It's always good to talk to you
100%.
guys. Everyone, guys, I left a link for all their channels, all their stuff in the comments. We'll also be leaving links for everything down in the description below. Everyone, like and subscribe. Thank you so much for our guests for coming on. Thanks for your time. And until next time, folks, everyone, take care.
Peace out, guys.
Yep.